Hello, I'm Graham Hill. I'm a retired solicitor, and I was the company secretary of the Dudson Centre until December, the end of December of this year. Um, it's difficult to remember exactly how I became involved in the project, but I think I was introduced to it by a by one of the trustees of Voluntary Action, who knew that I was interested in charity and also in heritage projects, and asked me if I would like to become involved. The project had been identified by an architect, sadly deceased, David Carr, who knew the Dudson business very well, who knew that they owned the site and that they had to find a new use for it. Was because of its listed status, the building had to be preserved and maintained. And he was also aware that voluntary action, which wasn't called voluntary action in those days, I think it was Stoke-on-Trent CVS, something like that. They were working out of a couple of porter cabins down the Leek Road, which were in pretty poor condition, and they were desperate to find new premises. So he put Dudson and the CVS together, and that's how it all started. When I first became involved, the buildings were in very poor condition. They had not been used for some time, and the building had listed status. It is a Grade 2 listed building, so there were obligations to keep it in good condition, and it certainly couldn't be demolished or replaced by another building. It had to be retained. So that was the big challenge. And of course, repairing and reinstating and modifying old buildings is probably more expensive than doing a new structure. Also, with a project like this, you have to find a use which is compatible with the building. And older buildings are not necessarily terribly easy to adapt to present-day uses. So that was a challenge, to see that the accommodation could be made to fit. But it was decided that it could, and it stood the test of time, as it's been here fulfilling the same purpose for about 30 years, nearly 30 years now, certainly over 25 years. Of course, with a project like this, one of the main problems is that of money, getting the necessary funding to accomplish it. And the funding was actually quite complicated in this case, but we were extremely fortunate in that the Dudson business kindly agreed to put a substantial sum in. The City Council were also extremely supportive of the project, and they put some money in. But it wasn't until the Charities Lottery came on board with a very substantial donation that we really thought that we were in business. That was also followed by the central government funding, or government funding through the single regeneration budget, and also the key funder, who I think provided over 40% of the funding, was the European Regional Development Fund. All that, we were able to proceed. Dudson was one of the major manufacturers in the city for very many years. And one of the nice things about the project, or I consider it to be a nice thing, was that the project was able to house the very substantial and valuable, interesting collection of Dudson ceramics, which the family and the business owned. They were able to house it in the bottle oven, which is where I am now sitting. And anybody who is interested in ceramics, it is well worth visiting and seeing and looking around. A beautiful space to house a wonderful collection. Bottle ovens are difficult buildings or structures to find a new use for, because they were built to be kept warm all the time as kilns, effectively. So if you haven't got that constant source of heat, keeping it dry and comfortable and not and so on does present issues, but we have managed to keep that going, to achieve that over a 25-year period. One highlight from my point of view was that we were very lucky and honoured that the late Queen came to Stoke-on-Trent to open the building, and I had the honour of being presented to her as part of that occasion. That will remain with me for the rest of my life. And I also must confess to getting a certain kick each time I see the building. I just think it's a wonderful place to be in the city, and as a, I'm proud to have been involved with the project. I think why this project has worked is that we were able to assemble a team with the range of skills which were needed to accomplish it. Voluntary action does many wonderful things, but it's not around to on its own to rebuild or manage projects of this nature. So we had to get various other people involved, and the project is also structured in a way to give vent to that, because the freehold is owned by the Dudson Centre and not Voluntary Action, who lease it from them. So there are loads of people. There are people around who are not involved in the day-to-day running or don't have responsibility for the day-to-day running of Voluntary Action, so they can concentrate their attentions wholeheartedly on the building and its fabric. I have a strong belief that it is important to recognise our heritage and not to just destroy it. I think it's important for the stability of our country. So I'm pleased that my children know how ceramics were made in a bygone era, and I think it adds to the fabric of the city, particularly a city which has been so strongly identified with one particular industry. I think to get a project of this scale off the ground without an enormous sum of money, it requires a lot of people and a lot of interested bodies to work together. And we were fortunate in that happened in this case. The City Council's support was essential, but also central government support through the single regeneration budget, and also through the ERDF, the European Regional Development Fund. Just on a slightly more personal note, I'm the son of a railwayman, and when I was a lad, all railway crockery was a sort of funny green colour. I believe that most of it was made on this site.